Good morning. This is Omni View, episode 82 for June 15th, 2026. Multiple perspectives, one briefing. Starting the week with a clear-eyed look at the stories that matter. Russia's missile strike on Kyiv's historic Pechersk Lavra monastery has killed 11 people and set a UNESCO site ablaze, raising fresh alarms over cultural destruction in the conflict. Russian forces struck the Pechersk Lavra complex in Kyiv, setting the Dormition Cathedral on fire and damaging surrounding historic structures. Ukrainian officials confirmed 11 deaths from the overnight attacks, while a separate Ukrainian drone strike in Russia killed 3 people. President Zelensky accused Moscow of deliberately targeting the site. Ukrainian leaders and cultural officials framed the attack as a calculated assault on national heritage, meant to demoralize civilians and erase shared history. Russian statements maintained the monastery was not the intended target and described the strike as part of ongoing military operations against military infrastructure. International heritage groups emphasize that damage to protected sites violates established protections for cultural property, regardless of the broader conflict. What evidence distinguishes between deliberate targeting and collateral damage in urban strikes? Shifting now to domestic policy in Britain, Keir Starmer stated that a ban on social media access for children under 16 could take effect next spring. He argued the platforms are contributing to unhappiness and safety risks for young users. The Prime Minister acknowledged that some teenagers will likely find ways around the restrictions. Government supporters present the measure as a necessary intervention to protect developing minds from documented harms associated with constant online exposure. Technology companies and some civil liberties organizations warn that broad age restrictions risk limiting access to information and social connection without addressing root causes of online harm. Parents and child advocates are divided, with some welcoming stronger defaults and others questioning whether enforcement can keep pace with workarounds. How would age verification systems actually operate across different platforms? Next, developments in Spain. Pedro Sanchez's wife, Begoña Gómez, and former Socialist Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero are scheduled to appear in court on charges including influence peddling. The cases come as Sanchez continues to lead the government after taking power in 2018 on a platform focused on reducing corruption. Opposition parties argue the scandals demonstrate that promises to clean up public life have not been kept and that family ties have influenced official decisions. Supporters of the current government maintain that the investigations are being used politically to weaken an administration that has challenged previous conservative networks. Legal observers note that both the timing and scope of the charges will determine whether they affect day-to-day governance. What standards apply when family members of elected officials face separate legal proceedings? In the United States, a separate case has drawn attention to immigration procedures. Daffy Michel, a Haitian asylum seeker, died from hypothermia in a Pittsburgh bus shelter days after being released from federal custody. A medical examiner ruled the death a homicide. Her family's attorney expects to file a lawsuit against Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which has stated it had no involvement in her death. Advocates for asylum seekers argue that release without adequate support or shelter in harsh conditions places vulnerable people at foreseeable risk. Immigration authorities emphasize that their responsibility ends at the point of release and that individuals are expected to arrange their own onward travel and housing. Local service providers point to gaps between federal release practices and available community resources in destination cities. What obligations do federal agencies have after releasing individuals from custody? In Norway, a high-profile conviction has tested public views on accountability. Marius Borg Høiby was convicted in Oslo on 2 counts of rape, plus 32 additional offenses including violence, threats, and drug crimes. The court sentenced him to 4 years in prison. Høiby is the son of Norway's crown princess. Norwegian media and legal commentators treat the case as a straightforward application of criminal law to a high-profile defendant. Royal family statements have focused on respecting the judicial process while offering private family support. Some observers note that the conviction tests public expectations around accountability for individuals connected to the monarchy. How do European royal families typically respond to criminal convictions involving relatives? NVIDIA announced plans to issue high-grade debt for the first time since 2021. The move extends a pattern of borrowing by companies leading artificial intelligence investment. Proceeds and exact terms have not yet been disclosed. Company filings and market analysts describe the offering as a routine step to fund growth, while interest rates remain relatively elevated. Fixed income investors see strong demand for debt from firms with robust cash flows tied to AI infrastructure. Some observers note that repeated large offerings by a handful of technology leaders could influence overall corporate borrowing costs. A major media transaction has also drawn scrutiny this week. Fox announced an agreement to purchase Roku in a transaction valued at approximately $22 billion. The deal would combine Fox's content networks with Roku's streaming platform and hardware. Regulatory review is expected before closing. Company statements present the combination as a way to strengthen distribution of Fox programming across living room devices. Streaming competitors and some investors question whether the price reflects realistic future growth in a crowded market. Media analysts highlight the transaction as part of ongoing consolidation between traditional media owners and technology platforms. What regulatory tests will U.S. authorities apply to this media tech merger? Now, to really understand this story, there's something most coverage leaves out. Most reports treat large media acquisitions as simple business transactions, yet the real mechanism involves control over both content creation and the platforms that deliver it to audiences. When a traditional network owner purchases a streaming device and service company, the combined entity gains leverage over which shows and channels appear prominently on living room screens and how viewer data is collected and used. This structure echoes earlier waves of consolidation in the 1990s and 2000s, when cable operators and content studios merged, and regulators examined whether bundled ownership reduced viewer choice. Knowing this, when you hear claims that a deal will simply expand access, you can evaluate whether the combined company's incentives favor promoting its own programming over rivals or independent creators. Next time you see a headline about a media merger, ask who controls the default settings on the device, how algorithms are weighted toward company-owned content, and what historical precedent exists for similar combinations altering the range of available news and entertainment. State-level efforts on environmental chemicals offer another angle. Testing of 115 products found that roughly 80% now meet limits set by state bans on PFAS forever chemicals in apparel. Some companies continue to exceed the thresholds. Public health groups describe the results as evidence that targeted regulation can change manufacturing practices. Environmental and health organizations view the reductions as proof that enforceable state-level rules can drive industry change where federal action has lagged. Industry representatives note that reformulation takes time and that remaining high readings reflect ongoing supply chain challenges rather than deliberate noncompliance. Regulators in states with the strictest rules point to the data as justification for maintaining or tightening existing standards. How do manufacturers track and verify chemical content across global supply chains? Researchers have suggested solar dimming techniques as one possible way to reduce ocean heat during an anticipated strong El Niño event. No implementation timeline or funding plan has been announced. Some climate scientists argue that exploring rapid cooling methods is prudent, given the scale of projected impacts on weather and agriculture. Other researchers caution that such interventions carry unknown side effects and could distract from emissions reductions. International bodies have so far treated the idea as an area for further study rather than near-term deployment. American singer Oliver Tree and 5 others died when 2 helicopters collided in midair near Rio de Janeiro. Video of the crash has circulated online. The incident occurred during Tree's world tour stop in Brazil. Brazilian aviation authorities are investigating the cause of the collision. Fans and fellow artists have shared tributes focusing on Tree's music and public persona. Local media note that helicopter traffic around major events in the city has raised safety questions in the past. Savannah Miller announced that her sister Sienna, 44, is engaged to Oli Green, 29, following a proposal described as beautiful. The couple has kept a relatively low public profile. Family statements emphasize private happiness and the couple's preference for staying out of the spotlight. Entertainment media have noted the age difference while focusing on the positive family reaction. Observers of celebrity coverage point out that lower-profile relationships often receive less sustained attention than higher drama pairings. Before we go, watch for further regulatory scrutiny of the Fox-Roku transaction and any updates on enforcement of Britain's proposed social media age limits. That's OmniView. For full source links and more context, check out today's written briefing on the OmniView Summaries page. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. If balanced perspectives are valuable to you, share this with a friend and subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Fascinating Frontiers a listen, the most fascinating news from space and science. You can explore the whole lineup at neranetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.